Hola amigos, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I was wanting to take you through a few tips to help you to finish that manuscript which has been languishing in a drawer or on your laptop for far too long. If you haven't been to my channel before, my name is Emma Bennet. I am writer of contemporary romance, Regency romance, children's picture books and non-fiction for writers. I'm also a freelance developmental editor, a creative writing instructor and a book coach. So these 5 tips are just ways that you can kind of take stock and set yourself up for success so that hopefully before the end of this year you will have a completed manuscript to do whatever you would like with. So the first thing that I would like to say before going into these points is that I think sometimes we underestimate just how big a deal it is to complete writing an entire book. So many people attempt to write a book or want to write a book, and the vast majority of those manuscripts never get finished. And that's for a variety of reasons. It might be that life gets in the way. It might be that the story just isn't strong enough. There are all sorts of things that can get in the way of finishing this manuscript. So what you need to work out is what's getting in your way and how you can jig things around so that you are able to complete it, and just imagine how wonderful that will feel. So the first thing to do before we even get into these tips is to establish where you are with the manuscript that you've been working on at this point. So what I would do is set aside some time, however long you think you will need. Obviously that will depend on how long the manuscript is already. If it's a decent sized manuscript, say at least 50,000 words, I would definitely set aside a whole weekend, a couple of days, something like that to do this, and then read through the whole thing. Get together also any notes or anything else you've got, Pinterest boards, whatever is relevant to this story. Get it all together so that you can take stock of exactly what you have got already, and then you can work out what you still need to do. So at this point, when you're completely clear of the challenge ahead of you, it's time to put my 5 tips into practice. So the first tip is to be realistic. Yes, it's the beginning of the year. We're still all very hyped up and wanting to make this the best year ever and be super productive and all of that. But you've got to be realistic about the amount of time and energy that you can put into this project, especially if, like most of us, you have a lot going on in your life. Or maybe it's not that you've got so much going on, but maybe you find writing extremely draining. Something like that. So you know that you can't just go and sit down for 8 hours and bang out 6,000 or 7,000 words. That's just not something you're able to do. So maybe it would be more sensible to decide to work on your manuscript for half an hour at a time, several times a week, and that's the way that you will get it done. So a book that I really, really love that talks about this kind of thing very well is James Clear's Atomic Habits. And he talks about setting up systems rather than just setting yourself goals, so that you're putting all the steps in place to be able to achieve what you want to, instead of just thinking, I'd like to do this, without properly working out exactly how you're going to do it. So you can either set targets for the amount of time that you spend working on your manuscript each week, or you could set a word count for each week or each fortnight or each month, however you think it'll work out for you. For example, if you worked shifts and you tend to work kind of like 8 days in a row or something, and then you have like 4 days off, well, there's not a lot of point for that. So the 7 days out of the 8 that you're going to be working, you're not going to want to be setting yourself big writing targets. So maybe in that case, it might be better to do it over the fortnight, so that you can break up that target over that time and you have a good chance of hitting it. Similarly, break down the task into chunks. Writing a whole book is a massive, massive, massive task, but completing one chapter or one scene, that's much more doable. So that would be another way that you could set yourself targets. You could say that you're wanting to write 5 or 6 scenes per week, something like that, if you're not keen on either working out how much time you'll spend on it or how many words you're going to do. Tip number 2 is to establish a writing routine. So this is kind of another tip from James Clear's Atomic Habits. You need to know when you are going to write. There's no point in saying that you are going to write 1,000 words a day if you have absolutely no idea how on earth you are going to be able to fit that in. You're better off deciding that you're going to write 500 words a day if the only time that you have, for example, is during your lunch hour, and you want to spend maybe a few of those lunch hours each week working on your book. Or maybe you know that just during the week you're too tired and you won't be able to do much writing, but you could dedicate Saturday afternoon or something like that. You've got to be completely realistic and know when you are planning to do things. And that might mean that you have to switch up your schedule a little bit, maybe getting up early if you're one of those weird early morning people, or staying up late, which seems a much more sensible idea to me, to have kind of an extra half an hour or hour where you can get some words in. Next tip is to eliminate distractions. I think we all work differently. Some writers really like to have music in the background, some like complete silence. I can have classical music if I'm writing some scenes. Usually I like quiet. Occasionally, if I'm having trouble, particularly with dialogue, I actually find that kind of pop music, something that's quite kind of dancey, helps me to write for some reason. I think it distracts me just enough that I'm not overthinking. So you kind of have to work out what works for you. I quite like to have my family around in the background, as long as they don't talk to me when I'm writing, which I appreciate makes me very, very difficult. I don't think I would want a completely empty house to write in. I think I'd find that a little bit weird. Similarly, some coffee shops work for me, others don't. Libraries can be quite good sometimes. It depends. You just have to find out what works for you in terms of what distractions you need to get rid of. Obviously, huge distraction, the internet, literally everything in the entire world right in front of you. If you can, turn it off. I think is the general consensus. I do tend to need to have the internet on because I use Google Docs, and I like it to be saved automatically and to update and everything like that. I also use Grammarly on there, and I do like to quickly be able to Google things if I think of something that I need to look up while I'm writing. I won't go kind of deep into the depths of research, but it is handy to be able to Google stuff. So I don't actually turn off the internet when I'm writing, but I do have to show a little bit of self-control, which I don't always find so easy. Tip number 4 is to join a writing community, and that can be any sort of community. I'm quite an introvert, so often going out and to in-person things I'm not that keen on. I start off keen on them, but then if it's cold, if I just don't feel like going, then I tend to kind of give up. So in my case, normally something online is better for me. You just have to know yourself and know what works for you. But having some support from writing community can really, really help you to stay accountable. It lets you know that there are other people who are in the same boats, and you can just give each other support, and it can be so powerful to help you to think of yourself as a real writer, somebody who writes and someone who is definitely going to finish that book. And my 5th and final tip is to take breaks and to avoid burnout. I'm a strong believer that if you take your writing seriously, you do have to sit down and write sometimes, even when you do not want to. But that doesn't mean that you should push yourself when you really, really can't. So there will be times when you're just a bit tired, or you fancy watching some TV rather than writing. And I often find myself in that situation, and it's a case of having to pull myself out of it. However, if I'm feeling really ill, then I'll give myself a break. Or if I'm completely exhausted and I really just need to relax, just take a break. It's not the end of the world, and you'll be able to catch up with that time, those words and everything a little bit later, next day, something like that, when you're just feeling more able to do so. It's just so important to know yourself and to know your limits and how you work best. I really, really hope that these tips were useful. Please, please, please just remember that writing a book is huge. It's absolutely enormous, and it sounds like such a simple thing to do. I'm going to write a book. Yeah, it's a short sentence. It's simple. It's not. It's an incredibly hard thing to do, especially if you count writing a book as doing all the editing and all the proofreading and getting it completely ready to either self-publish, to send off to an agent, or to send off to publishers. And give yourself some grace. Appreciate that what you're doing is hard and it is going to take time and it can't be rushed. And be realistic about what you're going to be able to do would be, I hope, the biggest takeaway that you can have from this video. I am going to go and get inside now because I am absolutely freezing, but please remember to boot that like button if you haven't already, and subscribe if you're not, because we have a lot of fun around here, and I will catch you in the next one.